Good evening. Welcome to our first online literary evening. We are thrilled to be able to host the premiere of the reading of Oxford and Cambridge Society Malaysia's member, Farriz Mashudi's debut work, A Wild Bunch. Also with us this evening is Malaysian actress Tika Mutamia, who is joining us from quarantine after returning from her tour in Australia. Your host for this evening is well known to many of our members. Fellow society member Chacko is an actor, voiceover artist and host. On the stage, he's acted in many plays, including Shakespeare Goes Bollywood and King Arthur in Camelot. His TV work includes Sabo Singh in the Singaporean sitcom Mr. Kiasu, and he's also done many shows for Cinemax, CBS and the History Channel. Many of us have seen his History Channel one. He's hosted many events and award ceremonies across Asia and the US for esteemed organizations such as the Oxford Society Malaysia and also Prince Charles. Chacko read law and archaeology and anthropology at Pembroke College, Cambridge, before he was called to the bar at Lincoln's Inn. He was a medico-legal lawyer at Shern Delamore and also chair of the Law and Ethics Committee of Malaysian AIDS Council before he threw up his wig and gown for the stage and screen. Chacko and Tika will be reading several stories, and Chacko will be talking to Farriz about her work. So please do put your questions in the YouTube chat box and I'll pass them on to Chacko for him. We've put some time aside at the end for Q&A for you. We're also hosting a Zoom chit chat after this event at 9:15 so that you can get to talk to the author in the way that you normally would at a kind of a literary festival. And the Zoom link to that chit chat was emailed out to our members this morning. So, ladies and gentlemen, the Oxford and Cambridge Society of Malaysia is proud to present to you A Wild Bunch.
Just between us.
I thought she was going to kill me with that thing.
So you bit her? How is that smart?
Look, she was covered in plastic. I couldn't see her eyes and that mask. I hate it when people cover their mouths.
Why is that?
It looks stupid. Why would anyone on purpose block an aperture that's made for eating? To put food and drink in, cover it up and you're like a dustbin with a lid on.
Or a Boris letterbox.
Don't you start. It's not anti-Islamic. Well, I don't think so. And for the record, I love letterboxes. Wouldn't change a thing about them. Except at a poop scoop, perhaps.
Who said I have nothing against Muslims? And if you think about it, isn't everyone covering up now? Wigs, hijab, niqab, shela, burqa, chador, hair, face, top, bottom, waist, all over. Isn't it all just about protection, like PPE from this awful disease?
What was it protection from before, you think?
The sun maybe, protective fathers, jealous husbands, envy, bad hair days, to fit in.
Wait! I know what it's really protection from.
Well, will you tell me or not?
It was sin.
Sin? And what would you know about that? You're a dog, for heaven's sake.
It's true that I am, and you're a pig.
Well, as domesticated animals, I believe we have evolved.
You would say that. Your lot gave them swine flu before this.
Well, I'd be happy for humans not to eat us. That's where variant viruses always start, with carnivores like you and exotic meats.
Make them all vegans. Now, what would you call that?
How about a good start?
I'll bark to that.
Well, viewers, that was Just Between Us, one of Farriz Mashudi's wonderful stories in a collection of Wild Bunch. And reading with me is the lovely Tika Mutamer. Now, Tika, hi Tika, is a wonderful young Malaysian British actress from KL who hails from the prestigious East 15 Drama School in London. Some of you watching will know her proud parents who are also watching, Tunku Dato Mutamer and Datin Pauline. Hello there. Now, when we were planning this, actually, Elizabeth Lee is the mastermind of this whole thing, plotting this program along with President Emma Davidson. And Elizabeth suggested that I should get someone young and bright to read with you, Chacko. Now, Elizabeth's suggestion, however gentle that might be, when Queen Elizabeth suggests, it really is an order. So, coming to terms with the fact that I may not be that young anymore and growing rather dull with age, I thought of who could I get? And I immediately thought of you, Tika. And viewers out there, Tika and I have done some scenes from Shakespeare, including a scene from Othello. No prizes for guessing who played Othello and who played Desdemona. Now, this is a couple of years ago, and I heard that Tika was doing a tour in Australia with a British company of 4 women who are the world's first cycling theatre company. They're called the Handlebars, and they were touring the show The Tempest across Australia, and it got cut short, luckily for us. And Tika actually has managed to get back to us from Queensland and is currently in quarantine in a hotel room in KL. So
room 1022.
So glad you could join us. And Elizabeth and Emma, I hope you think and agree that she is bright, young, and talented. Okay, well, we're all here to meet the author, Farriz Mashoudi. And may I invite Farriz to join us?
Hello, everyone. That was wonderful. I really enjoyed the reading. I can't believe it.
Oh, we've had so much fun playing with your stories and having fun with it. It really is they're lovely, and they do come to life, I think, when you read them out aloud. So thank you for sharing them with us, Farriz. For the viewers who may not know Farriz is, of course, a member of our society. She's a graduate of St. Hilda's College, Oxford. Sorry, you chose the wrong university. And light blue here, with a bit of dark blue over here, just to be, neutral since I'm the host. She read jurisprudence and was called to the bar in a temple. She's been many things at many times: oil and gas lawyer, business journalist, spin doctor, policy advisor, news editor, and talk show host. I think this is the first time you're being the guest on a talk show. Is that right?
That's true. It's a bit awkward being on the other side, I have to admit.
And it's a bit intimidating, me trying to interview you, who've worked on Bloomberg Astro and TV3, etc., as well as law firms such as Ince & Co. in Dubai. You've been with Shell and Miri, Qatar Petroleum. You've lived in Vancouver, UK, Dubai, Singapore, Doha, KL, of course, and Turkmenistan. And currently, you're seeing the pandemic out in the UK. And now you've embarked on a career in writing. How did that come about?
Well, in all those previous roles that you've mentioned, there's always been a lot of writing. And the type of writing I'm doing now is just another kind. I think I've always wanted to be a writer of stories, to entertain in this way, but to also get people thinking. And I think this year, the planets just aligned. They really did. I've been so lucky to have very active and supportive writer groups where I live, which is mostly in Doha. Shout out to anyone from the Doha English Writing Circle and the QNL, the National Library in Qatar, if you've joined us. But also here in the UK, where I'm stuck in lockdown. It's an area which is near Hay-on-Wye. It's got heaps of writers in this area and a lot of resources.
Fantastic. Now, tonight is all about your upcoming publication, A Wild Bunch. It's a collection of short stories involving animals. What inspired you to write these pithy tales? And they're very topical, aren't they?
Well, I suppose in a way I was forced to. The animals came to me. And I don't mean just in my mind. Literally, they were, as I was writing, I was in the middle of writing a novel. I meant to finish, and I did finish a first draft in April, but there would be a pheasant walking out up and down outside the window. A hare came around Easter, and you have little rabbits every day. There have been the ravens nesting in the trees, and they were watching us, with us not going out so much these days. And then, of course, in end of March, early April, there were the reports about bats and snakes and pangolins and the mutations and the pandemic that they may or have caused. And I felt that somebody had to speak up, especially for the poor pangolins. They didn't have a voice.
Okay, yes, and we have stories about the pangolin and many of these creatures, but let's meet some of the animals that first inspired you to write these stories. Let's meet yes, here
so
we have
either Phil or Fergus. We have two pheasants that just come out of the woods. We're not sure which of them this one is. There was a female that they were fighting over. As you can see, he's a rather handsome boy.
Okay, yes, and they actually used to come and look at you under lockdown through the windows, huh? Let's meet some of the other animals that came. I think how cute.
So that's a hare, and he features in a story about Easter, which I wrote just after Queen Elizabeth made her historic Easter speech saying Easter is not cancelled.
So the hare is the bigger one on the right, and there's a bunny rabbit, and actually I love that story, although we just couldn't, there's so many wonderful stories, we couldn't read them all. But I know that the hare is jealous of the rabbit because the rabbit became the Easter bunny and he didn't get to be the Easter hare, which is very cute. What else? Any Malaysian animals?
Well, so the collection also has hornbills in it. It's from my time when I was with Shell Malaysia, and we were living on Shell Camp in Miri, which is it was a wonderful experience. And I'm really happy to say that it's now a nature reserve.
Okay.
So that story is, the title is actually Birds of Paradise.
Very apt. And of course, we have to feature the most popular pet in Malaysia, that is the cat.
Yes, this is a white Persian. And, with Hari Raya this year being a bit different with the movement control order you have in Malaysia. And, my parents are stuck in Jendabai. We have family in KL and they can't visit each other because they can't cross state lines now.
Okay.
And it just occurred to me also that, for animals like these, it's quite nice to have a change, a quiet time for once without open houses.
Absolutely. And we have a story about that, which we are going to read excerpts from in a little while. So let's just get into the stories, right? Yes, importantly, how do we get a copy of The Wild Bunch or A Wild Bunch?
Well, okay, so there's no official publisher yet on record. People could get in touch with me directly for a mailing and get onto the mailing list. That would be via email. So it's just Farriz Mashoudi at farriz.m@gmail.com. And I'll have a blog going in a few weeks. It's farrizmashoudi.blog.
Okay, look out for Farriz's blog, and you can email her. Farriz you can see the spelling on the screen, farriz.m@gmail.com. And anybody watching wants to, is inspired to publish for her or knows contacts who might want to publish these tales, they really are wonderful. Do get in touch with Farriz too. I'm sure she'd be very happy to hear from you. Well, let's jump into the stories. We only have an hour and lots of lovely stories to share with you. So let's move on to the next segment.
Pandak didn't like the idea at all. But if he didn't go along with the planned attack, he'd lose his friends. Jangan, can we not consider the consequences? He tried pleading with them again. Their numbers had dwindled. There were only a few of them left. They would all die. What would be the point? But Pandak was the only one able to analyze. The others mostly couldn't understand him. Their sights blinkered, brains emptied with disuse, their stares were blank. Pandak could see straight through them. York! We strike before they rise! Pumped by the battle cry, the rest of the pangolins uncurled themselves into action. Their survival as a singly united race, always fragile at best, was about to completely unravel. Pandak knew what would happen next. The humans hunting them down as delicacies would have a very merry windfall. Like delectable durians dropped straight into their laps. Christmas would come early for some, for others, the New Year's feast. The logic, basic and sound, was still beyond the simpleton's comprehensions. Bipeds and quadrupeds, human and beast, their shared future would come entirely undone because of this. Rolling, panting hard, Pandak scampered in the opposite direction. Evolved, he'd do well to get away. This was no airborne vector running amok. Without a second look back, the last of the pangolin's mutated genes were carried away with him, raging into that worldly night.
Thank you, Tika. That was a story about pangolins, and pangolins will feature a little bit in the next story, which is also set in Malaysia.
The Good Widow.
As mistress of the sprawling white villa atop Janda Bike's central hillock, Sheba, a grey-eyed Persian cat whose coat was as white as a house, had looked down on the valley below for more years than she cared to recall. Starting from the first day of Hari Raya, Sheba's house would attract pangolin visitations for an entire week. Was it because they liked its color and hers too? White symbolized purity, did it not? As well as blessings. The locals from the village and its aboriginal inhabitants, the Orang Asli, had it that the pangolins themselves were mystical carriers of these qualities. Could they also be bestowing these on their visits? Janda Bike in lockdown still permitted residents to move about freely within the small community. But despite it being Hari Raya, the noose of social distancing measures introduced in March had barely been loosened. There would be no visitors from outside the area and no open houses allowed to be conducted. Full stop. That was all there was to it. The government had declared and the army was here to enforce it. As aghast as her neighbors, Sheba, however, didn't have the heart to deny the pangolins, whom she knew would be sure to come. She would have to find a way around this. For the elegant Persian feline to even think of waiting for visitors by the front gate was inconceivable. Instead, Sheba would have the pangolin's money packets ready for collection from the expanse of a front porch. She could even be seated the whole time without causing offense. If this had been Halloween, you could say it was treats only, without any tricks. The pangolins wouldn't have to come inside, nor would they need to sit down and try to keep still while fighting the urge to curl up. They could come and be gone in a blink. Neither would Sheila insist on salams. A raised paw 2 meters away wasn't only fine, it was perfect coronavirus etiquette. If only, the pangolins wished, if any of this was real, could it always be like this? Sheba could only agree. Purring to herself outside a quiet house, without a stream of food and guests to tend to, and with the grandkids arriving in the morning, who would have thought it possible? Wasn't gluttony and waste a sin, and she was still being charitable? It was, wasn't it? Sheba didn't like to say it. But for the good widow of Janda Bike, this was the best Hari Raya ever. Right? And wasn't that a lovely tale, Tika?
So lovely. Love that. Love Sheba. Wonderful cat.
Yes. All right, now we move on to the next one. Mutant shell shock.
Should he have returned? Pacing the confines of his enclosure, Leonard couldn't stop asking himself this question. For the Korean graduate tortoise, life as a foreign student in the States had become unbearable. Sidelong glances anywhere he went, even on campus. But Leonard's only perversion, if at all, being kimchi, he knew he'd done nothing to deserve this. Like the Philippine aunties in New Jersey who'd resorted to covering up like Muslims for safety. The blessing behind the charade being that the harassers were too dumb to know that to be both wasn't mutually exclusive. It's the Chinese virus. This was like the yellow fever all over again, except instead of black bodies accused of spreading the disease, it was tortoises like him, with yellow shells and brown and olive and all the shades in between. Wuhan needed defending. Lenin couldn't let the COVIDists win. Racism, COVIDism, weren't they the same thing? They'd never get hired now with this different kind of CV being held over them. But tortoises never tackled head-on, not if they could help it. Keeping heads down, bowed, and remaining steadfast, these were the time-tested strategies they'd been taught. Not to strike back or lash out. Tortoises weren't terrorists. Who would be if they weren't forced to stand up? The real question was whether it was time to thrive. And as crises went, they didn't get any better than this. Leonard was resolved to sign up. He would enlist Michael too, and they could form a cell. They'd call it Sacred Souls, which would be so ironic. Briefed of the status of their latest assignment, Donatello and Raphael called for more recruits, dubbed the Mutant Ninja Turtles. Born in the rank sewers of the bowels of New York, they were in fact tortoises. A small detail. Not being big fans of the fake news or hyperbole, the Fantastic Beasts simply had enough on their hands to lose any sleep or split hairs over this. There was propaganda to be put out and new stuff to be produced.
Bravo. I think only a bright young thing could have done that story.
Good old tortoise.
Okay, now for something a little different.
Arrivederci.
Stuck in a space with little to look at, Honey had been working her tail off these past 2 years in Japan and couldn't believe her luck. She was free at last. Rendezvousing with her old school gang, she was ready to have a blast. Arriving in the pitch of night, they rested till first light. That's when the beauty of the surrounds hit her straight in the gut. Seeing the warm rays of tawny peach and pale yellows at dawn above the sleepy bridges and canals, calm for the first time, she actually wept. Venice, a porpoise's paradise, as the tour guide said, was jaw-dropping. If only there weren't so many tourists. Were the Chinese white dolphins off St. Mark's Square here for Marco Polo? The long and short-beaked common types led by the other largest group, the Americans. But some she personally knew had made the trip of a lifetime, bringing their pipes with them for a few pennies from as far as Peru. At the marine park east of Tokyo, Honey was called a melon-headed whale, which she hated. The protrusion was rather round and large on her dolphin proportions, but it didn't change who she was. Worse, whales were a sworn enemy. A biennale, they said it would be, but not for new art. Like the malady, Honey would look forward to coming back in 2 years. Arrivederci, till we meet again. To those who may still be around. Ciao, ciao. If you don't dry, if you don't drown or die first for your sins.
Oh,
That's a little dark, isn't it?
dark tale, dark
Let's
dolphin tale.
talk to Farriz about that story.
I was just memorized by both of your readings. Yeah, so Honey was a real dolphin. She lived in Tokyo, in a marine park, just east of the big capital. But she died, and I think it was as much out of loneliness as anything else, because with the pandemic and with the struggles the marine park was having, there were no visitors. So I think this is another thing that we're seeing in the pandemic.
We just saw Honey on the screen, right? Yeah. So I hope the viewers got a good look at her, and it's a true story. And
she sadly did not make it to Venice, however. Yeah. But there was that you were saying there was fake news of dolphins being in Venice, but actually they were close enough. They made it. The video was actually taken in Sardinia, and I think we are seeing a resurgence of animals coming into towns and villages because humans have moved back a bit and given them more space.
And they've been coming into Port Dickson closer than ever before. You can see them from the shore. I mean, there were news reports here about that, so that's rather wonderful. But I think it touches on the dark side of the pandemic, isn't it? Because many people die.
Well, these stories aren't just about the animals; they're also about us. And so you've got you've got a llama up there. That's Winter. She was from another report that I read in early May, Market Watch report, and we live in hope as well, because whether it's vaccines, from the scientists at Oxford, Imperial, and other top universities, it could be llama antibodies, their blood, that could be saving us.
And where was the story in? That's a picture from a news report,
Market
right?
Watch.
Ah, okay.
I think it was 7th of May. Yeah, the 7th of May Market Watch report that was from. So
really very up to date. I think that's one of the very recent stories that you added in. And well, let's move on to the next segment. I think that's a very striking llama, and I think we will get her story in a little while.
Yeah, we'll meet her later, won't we, Chacko?
Yeah. Let's move to the next story.
Birds in flight.
What was the polite way of addressing them again? Passengers had long become customers. He knew that. And also that stewardesses wasn't exactly PC anymore. Was it flight attendant or air hostess? Was that what these birds used to be called? Could he still call them? Oh, so it was him now, was it, being rude? What would you have made of this then? Not forgetting the tidy sum extra he paid to be self-isolating in business, and that as a Sky Club Platinum member. He was entitled to service, not this.
I will let you rest in peace.
Excuse me? What did you just say?
I go now. You want to sleep?
And the stewardess, hostess, flight attendant, any of those would do, had promptly reclined his chair bed, knelt down, and pressed his shoulder in a comforting gesture, repeating in a soothing tone as she did so,
Please, rest in peace.
Happy to still be alive on the ground, the customer covered the suggestions form with a lengthy complaint. Credit to the old buzzard. He did remember to say, cabin crew.
I love that little one. Good little short tale.
Yes. Let's move on to the next one.
You before me.
Hurry, when is my turn, please?
The Wagyu bellowed, politely nonetheless, having trouble breathing. The boy had had a beef with Harry since morning. A Hereford, Harry knew how to wait. Bred into him as a calf, it was called discipline where he came from. None of this moaning for massages, beer in the feed. He'd be wanting sushi next. And sake. What was that, Harry wondered, hearing the boy crying out for it every night in his sleep.
Just make do, mate.
Harry soothed kindly, despite himself.
Oh, but you don't understand. It's not like this in Kobe.
And he paused for a gulp of air.
We all had musk. You don't need one here. I've told you before, our air is better, believe me.
Behind the positivity and upbeat note, Harry could see that the 1-year-old recently arrived from Japan, the rasping in his throat increasing, looked unlikely to last the night.
Here, you go before me. It'll make you feel better. Then you can have a nice sleep.
The boy dropped his head in a deep bow, his eyes dulled, with a homesickness that would never be cured.
There. No need to be soppy. You just lie back and enjoy the respirator. Close your eyes and dream of that sake stuff.
Later, in the darkness, a feeble whisper.
Sayonara, Hari-san.
Then the boy was still.
Oh, that's a little sad.
Very, yeah.
But that's part of the pandemic and part of COVID.
Mm. Yes.
And we have another one, which is also along similar lines. Haram.
Like a broken water dispenser, Hafsa's tears had been free-flowing for a week. She couldn't believe what was happening. Haram! The shame of it! Hatim would be shot! He'd done nothing but pull through, but who would foot the bill for surgery that cost an arm and leg now that their master was dead?
Hamad al-Bakroum, the most gentle and humble of men and patriarch of the tribe of the Green Quarter, the Kabilat Akdar of the Al-Falba Desert, where mushrooms sprouted after the first winter rains, where falcons soared above swift-legged. Their protector had fallen.
The women cried, and the men buried him with bowed heads. None dared to step outside. Metal servants droning on wheels plonked his plastic-covered corpse in a deep hole, denied a return from earth to earth, dust to dust, seeped in disinfectant. Would the sheik's diseased body ever rot? And could his soul find peace caked in soap hardened in the sun?
That Hatim was alive was thanks to the equine hospital. Without it, he'd have been shot. The customary kindness to horses that weren't expected to make it. And now that the stallion, a stud, was saved, would he still go that way without anyone to pay?
To Hafsa, it was all abundantly stupid. Enough said. Humans before horses, as always. Now that even human life was cheap, a four-legged one was cheaper still. Khalas.
End of Sheikh Hamad. End of Hatim. End of story. Well, after those beautiful but rather sad stories, let's move on to something a little more cheerful. Viewers out there, remember Winter the Black Llama? This is her story as Farriz imagines it. No spit.
The llama models knew to keep 2 meters apart coming down the runway and to keep their distance behind the scenes. These were the days of COVID-19. She'd have to cut them loose if they didn't. Then again, most anything could upset this doyenne of the high fashion scene. Poor taste, tawdry color schemes, too much skin, not enough modesty, and especially questionable judgment. All saw designers being put on the spot. No bueno, they'd be dropped.
A seasoned TV producer and magazine editor besides, the long-lashed and pursed-lipped Gina knew what worked and what wouldn't. And she particularly loved how Winter, the Belgian scientist turned supermodel, was strutting her stuff. Covers and spreads, however, were a different animal altogether. And Winter would have to work with her for them to get through the season's worst.
The June edition would feature Winter as a single female llama lying in a bed of alpaca studs. Her empowered black pelt would stand out against the machismo of their woolly greys and browns. A statement piece like no other, it was only befitting, Gina believed, for the feisty 4-year-old pioneer of llama antibodies treatment now being mass-produced to save the world.
The shoot wouldn't take much longer. Would Winter just lie back and think of Belgium? She may be the hottest creature on the planet, but Gina had to insist, COVID-19 savior or not, it was a no-brainer. No bueno. The spitting had to stop. Well,
A last line.
That's the last in our series that we're presenting here, viewers. I hope you enjoyed that. Sorry if there were moments where you couldn't see. I know my screen froze once or twice. I hope that didn't affect your enjoyment of the stories or your ability to hear them. But Tika and I have had a great time reading them, haven't we?
We've had a wondrous time. Yeah, I really enjoyed these short stories. It kept me company in quarantine. Thank you, Farriz.
All right, let's bring Farriz back. And
so there are actually 33 of these pieces. I know you did some of them, like The Good Widow, even Mutant Shell Shock, the Ninja Turtles. Those were extracts. So some of them are a bit longer. Some are, in fact, a bit shorter. There's one which is under 50 words. Yeah, so hopefully they'll get published soon. There is actually one of my short stories is being published this weekend. It's in conjunction with the National Flash Fiction Day in the UK, which is this Saturday, 6th of June.
Fantastic. So how timely. You could even post the recording of this to commemorate that. And I'd like to say a huge thank you to my neighbors. Steve and Suyin Haga had a massive technical problem. We had a power failure and the internet wasn't working like 20 minutes before we had to go on. And I had to run over to the neighbors and they've set things up for me wonderfully in like 10 minutes. So thank you, Steve and Suyin and family. Sorry to interrupt your dinner, running over with my laptop. But it all worked out. And we've got some comments and questions from the viewers. I don't know how many viewers we have, but you know, if you have questions, do post them in the chat column next to the YouTube live screen, and Farriz will answer them for you. So Riz Music says, shout out from Doha. So do you have anything to say to Riz, Farriz?
Well, hello. It's a friend of mine, Rizal, who was at CATS actually in Oxford. He read jurisprudence as well, and he's a lawyer working in Doha. So hello.
Hello, Riz. Nice.
Hi, Riz.
And we have Roberto De Simone from Cologne, Germany. That's my friend. Hi, Roberto.
Oh,
Thanks for
hello,
joining me.
Roberto.
Roberto does a wonderful job. He's my webmaster. He's a friend, but he created a website as a present to me for a birthday and manages it. And it's great to see you. And he's been promoting these readings on the website for me. So thank you, Roberto. Vicky Fennessy has a question. Has Farriz ever written a story about peacocks?
I have not, but that doesn't mean I will not. I'd be happy for people to send me their ideas, their story ideas and leads, and I'll look into it. I promise.
I guess you won't have peacocks peering into your window in the British countryside.
We did in Dubai, and that was interesting because where we lived, it was on a street that had a number of private palaces. And so they had private zoos and menageries, and every once in a while you'd have a peacock wandering over.
Lovely.
I've been upstaged by a peacock before, actually.
Have you?
When I was doing the cycle tour in the UK, we were in a peacock sanctuary and we were performing, and the peacocks came and were just squawking over all of our dialogue. It was amazing.
I'd also be interested to know what particular aspect of the peacock it is that Vicky feels warrants or should have a story.
I can think of many, right? They're just such beautiful creatures, and they love strutting their stuff, right? And yes, apparently many people loved ninjas. So good on Tika and Farriz for writing that.
It's a fun one.
Yes, and it brings in the issue of racism, right? I mean, the Chinese were being discriminated against around the world, not least because of a certain world leader calling it the China virus or the China virus. And then I think later in China, once they sort of got on top of the pandemic, Africans were being discriminated as well by them.
So these were all true stories that
it does bring out some of the.
Sorry, so it was true. It was a true story. It's an incident relayed to me by a friend in Doha of relatives of hers that were living in New Jersey and were facing so much harassment. They're very fair-skinned, and they were facing harassment for being Chinese. So, and I don't know whether in times like this, and whether these problems didn't already exist. In many places where you have multiracialism, where we're multiracial, there's also multi-racism that underlies a lot of things. And if womankind, if we are not kinder, maybe we are getting what we deserve. And that was also you could read it in the lengthier version of Arrivederci, where Honey is very happy to see the Italians also now suffering in captivity as she had been.
Absolutely, and of course, as we speak, America is burning because of racism, because of the killing of George Floyd by a policeman. So it's really very topical and very sad. Mark Disney says, animal stories inevitably invite allegorical or satirical messages. How do you approach the fairly well-worn path? What is your take or perspective?
Well, it's true. I used to say that when I was reading Ted Hughes, he's a poet. He was a poet laureate in the UK. He had one series on animals, and I thought, oh my God, this is so cliched. And then you have Aesop's fables, and these are all very well-worn and well-tread areas in the literary sphere. But at the same time, I feel these are stories that exist, and as I said before, they're not just about the animals. They're about us, and we evolve too. So, as do stories that need to be told.
Absolutely. And Ted Hughes is from Pembroke College, Cambridge, my college, and I actually had half of his room in my first year. So I lived in Ted Hughes' room, but I think he had a suite and split up into two separate rooms. So I had half of it, the bigger half, thankfully.
I hope that answered Mark's question. For Trump, is there another question coming up? I see it on the sideboard, but I think Chacko, you'll come to it shortly.
Yes. Oh, it's a very funny question. A great question, Mark, coming up. But before that, Sabera Sheikh says, so enjoyable. Thank you, Sabera, for joining in.
I think that's the beauty.
And Sabera, the one.
Sorry, I think that's the beauty of the short story format. You can pick it up and put it down as you wish, and just get some vignettes to think on without having. Not everyone has time for a lengthy novel these days.
Absolutely, I'm finding it's hard to read, isn't it? Because you're so bombarded by so much stuff. And Sabera is a wonderful actress, as you know, and director. So maybe you can get her to read some of your stories the next time you're presenting them.
That would be great.
Well, here comes Mark Disney's next question. When you get around to satirizing Trump, what animal would you choose?
I know this is one area that has really been overdone. I mean, if you watch the late night comedians from Stephen Colbert and the lot of them, what's his name, the Noah fella, they do this. Yes, Trevor Noah. They do this every night. I'm more inclined to go with Justin Trudeau's approach that I saw yesterday, or was it last night, of just pausing, putting it on pause, and taking a very different stance.
Okay. Well, I just had the image of the American bald eagle with a orange hairpiece on top.
One of the pieces in the collection, in a wild bunch, is called World Order.
Yeah, I love that one.
World Order. And so it was about a sort of like a United Nations of animals and their resolution at the end. I don't want to give it away, but the American contingent was represented by the bald eagle, and they did say, we got to get out there and make this country great again. But it just sounded all wrong in the context.
Yeah. And I think that was but there were so many voices of all the different animals, and the sad plight. The bats couldn't attend, right? So that was, and that was a very vivid story, but it's long. And
I'd be happy for Mark to suggest what animal should I choose.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark, over to you. I'm sure you've got some ideas. Yeah. And Ramli Ibrahim, Dr. Ramli Ibrahim himself is watching, and
I'm so honored. I love his work.
Congratulates us. Thank you, Ramli, for joining us. And Sabera has a comment. What's great is that Farriz has used popular show like Ninja Turtles and given it a twist. Also, the stories are short, leaving you with a quick understanding of the allegorical messages. Very true.
I did try to give people the option of just taking what they wanted from it and to read more if they wished. So each to their own, really, the interpretation.
I think your father calls them fables, right? Like Aesop's fables. Did he tell me that?
Pieces, yeah, no, he had a different word for them. Anecdotes.
Anecdotes. Okay. But I thought of Aesop's because those involve animals as well, right?
Yeah.
And with a teaching point. And Savita Saigal, hello. Hi, Farriz. And Chacko says Savita.
She's a lovely friend.
Oh.
Yes. Well, any tips on people wanting to start writing? What should they do?
Well, always, I think, read a lot. My mom was saying that perhaps in Malaysia, she doesn't see that many people reading. And at first that was discouraging for me because she said, nobody's going to be reading your work except you and the editor. And that would be tragic. But, that also got me really into short stories to make it more approachable, to encourage more people to read as well. What I've been doing over the years is whenever I had time, although working was full-time, I would try to dabble doing short courses when I could. And I remember because I would have stories in my head, when I'm on a train or when I'm traveling, things that just needed to be written down. But it wasn't that it didn't need some direction. So I think the short courses really did help me.
would you recommend any short courses for our viewers? Because there might be some budding writers out there.
It's hard to say, but I started out, there was one at, was it Farida American's little unit that she had beneath the Taran Merdeka. They had some day workshops way back then. And I remember they had a visiting author, and it was my first foray into this. And I remember asking, it sounded like a stupid question. It's still a stupid question to me now, but it was very important at the time. How do I know what I'm saying is right? Yeah, and that, and then the answer was, I know that the author just paused, and she said, "You will know," which was not very helpful, but it said it all at the same time. And then Silverfish Writing in Bangsar, they had some short courses on Saturday mornings, and there I first picked up that writing a book, writing anything, learning to write, it's like learning to ride a bicycle. It's hard to explain how to do it. You just got to get on with it and try.
Yes. So to read and to write, right? Practice makes perfect. And
read anything. It doesn't have to be a long book. It doesn't have to be.
Okay.
I read a lot on the phone.
Okay. I know we've got a lot of students out there watching us. Any questions from any of you? Do you have a practice that you do, like you write, wake up at 5 a.m. and write for 2 hours or something like that? I know some writers have like specific routines or techniques that they use to get the story out.
I find that the quiet time between just about waking up and just about going to sleep, it's almost like the pre-dream time that I get a lot of ideas. And if I don't write them down quickly, they will go, or they won't be captured in the same form. So I try to capture those. I'm a bit like the Dowager Countess in Downton Abbey right now. I don't have a weekend. So if I'm on a writing spree, it's just every day. So in a way, maybe I feel a bit guilty for not making some money right now from being a lawyer. So I'm trying to be productive, I suppose.
Okay. How has your family reacted to you taking so much time to write?
Oh, they're the biggest doubting Thomases ever. They don't even believe that this is happening. How can I be an influencer? I don't need, Mommy, you don't need Twitter. No, but you have no followers.
Oh. Well, I think once they've read the story,
wrong with anything else, so this is all right.
Okay. Well, Vicky says thank you, Vicky. I'm so glad you enjoyed it.
Thank you, Vicky.
Oh, I have to say thank you to both of you as well. You were awesome, really.
Thank you, Farriz.
Excellent.
The words are easy to read.
And Mark Disney hasn't suggested an animal, but he says it's anecdotes rather than fables.
Your old man is right. I'll let him know. He's not watching. I think he is.
And Savita has
of course, Sarah has.
She has some suggestions for writing courses. Coursera.
I've heard of that.
I think also what has been useful for me anyway.
Yes, and I think under the lockdown, even Harvard and places like that are offering free courses, right?
Yeah, but what's also been very helpful for me is to have writing buddies.
Are we there?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you all hear me?
Well, yeah. I understand.
I wanted to say that I think what's been most helpful for me is to have writing buddies, people that you can go to without feeling worried about sharing your stuff when it's still in an early draft, when you're still having your early ideas, and for feedback. So writing buddies are very important, and sometimes you meet them not through online courses. Sometimes you do, but the interaction is important. So that's what I miss right now in this pandemic. The writers' chats that you'd have over coffee and teas.
Yes.
And there
Call me anytime, Farriz, I'll hear you.
And I think under the pandemic, I think people are also coming up with compilations of writings done. I know Cantabrigian, Shamini Flint, the author, is compiling stories, and it needn't be stories. I think it could be recipes, it could be anything that can be written down in Singapore, but she's a Malaysian author, and people can Google her and contact her if you have stories out there that you want to submit.
The other thing also is journaling. And what I found with his stories was, and why I had to write them with a sense of immediacy, is because things were changing so quickly every day. So, you know, it was our attitudes, especially during the initial stages of lockdown. You know, the changes are just being thrust at us. So what I wrote, for example, 2 weeks ago, and I read it now, I'm going, it's so different now. I'm glad I had recorded it in a sort of journal format.
Absolutely. So you actually write by hand, or do you?
I use the laptop. It's just easier to have something on record, I think, and to go back to. And editing is just so much easier electronically.
Yeah. But it's just that if an idea comes to you while you're on the train, or I suppose you have your laptop with you most of the time.
No. I would jot down in longhand. I have a little notebook.
All right. I think before we're getting close to 9, Tika, what are your plans? You've come back and you're in quarantine. Once you get out of quarantine, you're going to stay on in KL? Or?
Yeah, find some good nasi lemak with Elizabeth and Farriz and Chacko. We'll all meet up and eat. Yes, please.
Well, Farriz is a little far away for nasi lemak. We'll do a Zoom call and eat nasi lemak in front of you. Like,
I can't wait to see my parents. I can't wait to hug them. Looking forward to that. Yeah.
Okay. Emma says, West Bondo, you use your family in your stories. West Bond, do you use your family in your stories?
This is a young teenager that we have as a house guest right now.
He's your technical support, right?
That is amazing.
He's also my IT support, sitting right here next to me on the sofa. And I have to say, not necessarily, although they sometimes give me ideas.
Very diplomatically put. I think that's one of the things people get a little frightened about when they realize they're talking to a writer, or they know someone is, oh my God, am I going to feature in the next story? And how am I going to come across? Do you get that a lot? Are people getting a bit nervous?
Not yet. So, you know, to a certain extent, it's good to stay under wraps.
Cool. And you have had a story accepted for publication.
Yes,
right?
yes. I mentioned it earlier. So it's coming up this Saturday, 6th of June. It's the Flash Flood Journal. So flash fiction is a form of short story. This category for the UK National Flash Fiction Day is under 500 words. The American format for short stories can be 5,000 even. Some people like them shorter. Ernest Hemingway once famously won a short story competition with just 6 words.
Wow.
For sale, baby shoes, never worn.
Yes.
Wow.
I know. Poignant, powerful.
Absolutely.
So it's not the number of words. It's, I suppose, what it makes you go away with, what you take away from it.
Very cool. Okay, well, it's almost 9 o'clock. Any last words to the viewers? Or
well, join my mailing list, and hopefully I'll be able to get out a wild bunch to you soon, and send me ideas for a volume 2.
Okay, and yeah, do you want to give your email address one more time?
So it's Farriz, Farriz, as you can see on the screen, .m@gmail.com.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Farriz. Thank you,
Amazing.
Tika, for joining us
Thank you
from your solitary confinement. Thank you again to Suyin and Steve for letting me run over and letting me use this beautiful study. And thank you for Emma and Elizabeth and Sean for making this whole thing happen so seamlessly. Hi, Emma.
Hi. Oh, Thank you so much. What a delightful evening. It was like a breath of fresh air. It was just so lovely. And there's so many positive, excited comments in the chat. So we'll save them in the chat and you can see them. I didn't want to confuse you too much by passing all the comments over. And there didn't seem to be much consensus of opinion on what kind of animal Donald Trump is. So we're not going to go through that. I'll wait for your story on that, Farriz. So Farriz, thank you so much for giving us the honor of hearing these stories for the first time. They're absolutely delightful. It's been a superb evening. Tika, amazing. People loved your one with the ninjas. Just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Chacko, perfect host as ever with everything you do. Thank you so much. Thank you to Elizabeth for having the foresight and the sense and the knowledge and the nows to bring everybody together and to create this amazing evening. Thank you very much. Thank you to Sean in the control room, managing all of our slides and keeping us all in the right place at the right time. And thank you to everybody that joined us and for all your questions and comments. We have an event on Friday, which is with the British High Commissioner, Charles Hay, 6 p.m. on YouTube. Again, come and join us and ask some questions there. Thank you to all of you guys again. And in the meantime, stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Zoom
society members can join us for the Zoom meet, right?
Yep, Zoom chat. Yeah.
We can have drinks and stuff.
Bye, everyone. And thank you to the animals.
Thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
Thank you, animals.
Yeah.
Brava.
Yeah.
Arrivederci.
Okay.
Arrivederci.
Arrivederci. Ciao, ciao. Thank you, Emma. Lots of love.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye, Farriz.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Tika.
Bye.